Hello, the story I have for you today is called A First Passover. It is by Leslie Swartz and illustrated by Jacqueline Chwast. This is a story about Passover, which is a holiday that the Jewish people celebrate. It usually happens during about the springtime, just as spring is beginning. Winters in Moscow were cold and dark. In the afternoons, I would race home to my grandfather, who was waiting in our apartment. Every afternoon, my grandfather sat in the kitchen, sipping his hot tea from a small glass. First, he would listen to me tell about my day at school. Look, there's Grandfather. Then, as the wind roared and the snow piled up outside, Grandfather would smile and tell me stories about when he was growing up. Our house was always full of aunts and uncles and cousins and lots of happy talk. But then Grandfather would frown when he told me about what happened when he became a young man. It was a terrible time, he said. Many people were put in prison for no reason. Jews had to be especially careful. It was not good to be a Jew in the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore, but it was a place that included Russia and lots of other countries, and it was gone when I was a little girl, so it's been gone for a while. And way back when, a lot of people didn't like the Jewish people, and they decided that they wanted to get rid of them. And so they would see the cars, they would go around and hunt them and put them in prison for no reason, just because they didn't like the religion that the Jewish people had. That's wrong. When the first signs of spring began to appear and the trees were budding, my grandfather always told me my favorite story from Jewish history. It was the Passover story. It went like this. Over 3,000 years ago, the Jews were slaves in Egypt. A shepherd named Moses went to ask Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, to let the Jews leave Egypt and be free. Each time, Pharaoh said no. After each no, the people of Egypt were struck with a terrible plague, but each plague passed over the Jews and did not harm them. The last plague was the most horrible of all. Finally, Pharaoh said the Jews could go free. Moses led them quickly out of Egypt on foot. They left so quickly that there was not time to let their bread dough rise before they baked it. So when they took it out of the oven, it was flat like a cracker, and they called it matzah. So a long time ago, the Jews were slaves in a place called Egypt, and Moses helped them to leave. He helped Pharaoh, who's the ruler of Egypt, let them go. And every year, Jewish people remember that on their holiday called Passover. And when Jewish people still celebrate this holiday, and they tell that story every time. And as always, when he ended the story, Grandfather would give me a big bear hug. He would always remind me, Joshua, you're never too old for a hug from your Zadie. I never told anyone outside of my family this Passover story. It was a secret. Jews have to be careful in the Soviet Union, my parents always said. Joshua, someday we will leave the Soviet Union, my mother told me. Jews have a hard life here. It will be hard for you to go to the university if we stay. Life is too uncertain, and there is no hope that things will get better. We will go to live with your Uncle Daniel in America, my father said, waving the letter from his brother that he kept in the desk drawer. So even though that people were trying to put the Jewish people in prison, it still wasn't always good to be Jewish in the Soviet Union. And even in some places today, people don't like the Jewish people for what they believe in, and maybe they don't say it out loud, but they still kind of think it, and that's bad. And they want to go to a place where they can practice their religion and not have to be scared. When will we leave? I asked my mother. Her answer was always the same. When we get permission. Who knows when that will be? One night, an old friend of my grandfather appeared at our door. Did we want to order any matzah? It was another secret. There was no place that Jews could buy matzah in Moscow. Grandfather's friend promised to make it and bring it to us in time for Passover. Nathan, we will buy your matzah, but please bring it at night, my father told him. We do not want anyone to know we are celebrating Passover. So they're worried if someone even sees them celebrating the holiday, they'll get in trouble. Maybe they might lose their job, or people will be mean to them. They can't practice their religion in freedom. They can't let other people know about it. And that's not right. You should be able to believe whatever you want to believe. The next week, we took the train to Uncle Sam's and Aunt Anna's house in the country. It was a long ride, but I loved getting out of the city. We brought Nathan's matzah wrapped in newspaper. At Uncle Sam and Aunt Anna's house, we drew the shades and ate the matzah with dinner. At dinner, Grandfather told my favorite story again. Everyone listened carefully. I knew that all Jews, no matter where they live, tell their story at Passover. At the end of the story, Grandfather whispered to me, "Someday, we too will go free, like the Jews in Egypt," and he gave me a big bear hug. I wondered if he was as wise in this as he was in other things. So look, just see they're having their special dinner with that matzah, that flat bread. All Jewish people celebrate Passover, and they all tell that story and eat that special bread at the same time every year. It helps them remember a time when they were slaves in Egypt and what they did, and it helps them remember how to be kind and caring to other people and to remember their history. I got my answer more quickly than I expected. About 2 weeks later, my father came home early. He was bursting with news. I have it, he said, waving a postcard he had just received. "We have gotten permission to leave. We are going to America where my brother Daniel lives, but we must be ready quickly." We packed what we could in a short time. We didn't even have a chance to say goodbye to friends. We were going to a new country. But unlike the Jews in Grandfather's story, we took a jet plane to freedom, to America. They're going to America because there they can be Jewish and they can celebrate Passover and do all the things they want to with their religion, and nobody can tell them not to. At first, everything in our new country was strange and different. School was noisy, everyone spoke English so quickly, and the food wasn't the same. The white bread was tasteless. Here in America, after regular school, I go to Hebrew school, where I am learning what it means to be a Jew. I am learning to read Hebrew and the Torah. That's the special Jewish book. Now when Grandfather waits for me in the afternoon, I have exciting things to tell him. "Would you believe, Grandfather, that all of your stories are in the Torah?" But Grandfather does not seem at all surprised. Look, and here's a picture of what it might be like at Hebrew school. So because in his school in the Soviet Union, he couldn't learn about being Jewish, and now he can. So he's learning Hebrew, which is the language that a lot of Jewish people will read or speak or write. And that's the language that their Torah is written in, which is their special religious book. And all of Grandfather's stories are in that. Even though they didn't have the book before, they were in his memory. Tonight we will celebrate our first Passover in America. It will be very different. This year there will be no matzah man coming to our door. We can buy all the special Passover foods at the supermarket. My mother says we will have a Passover feast with gefilte fish and with nadlach. Tonight we will go to my Uncle Daniel's house for the Seder. We won't have to draw the shades. We will read from the Haggadah, and we will learn about all the special foods that are symbols of Passover. The karpas, matzah, maror, harisset, roasted lamb bone, roasted egg, and cups of wine. Look, they can get all the food that they need right in the supermarket. During Passover, many Jewish people will eat food that's called kosher. That means it's special food made in a special way. And you can see here, they eat these special foods to remember their history. They each have a special meaning. Like how when you see a birthday cake, you know it's someone's birthday. A birthday cake means a birthday. It helps you remember. And this food, the eggs and the lamb and there's bitter herbs and a special sauce, that helps the Jewish people remember what it was like way back in Egypt. And look, there's the matzah. And see, the men are wearing hats, so this is called a kippah or a yarmulke. It's a special little thing that they wear in the back of their head, and they're all reading out of what's called the Haggadah. And that's where all the instructions and the stories are about Passover. And they have all their special food and their candles. How do you think they're feeling about being able to celebrate Passover? Tonight I will ask in Hebrew, why is this night different from all other nights? Now I know the answer to that question. Tonight is the night to celebrate freedom for all Jews and all people, whether they are in Egypt, the Soviet Union, or anywhere. But tonight there is one thing that will not be different. My grandfather will once again tell the story of Passover and give me a big bear hug. And this time we all know that this story is my family's story too. So the Jewish people have been around for a long, long, long time. And there have been places in the world where they couldn't celebrate their holidays. And so they're very excited to be able to celebrate in America. And look, see this? This is written in what's called Hebrew. I don't know what that says, but instead of writing in like ABC, like you do when you're speaking in English or in Spanish, they have these special letters. I hope you liked that story. I liked learning about the Jewish people. And I hope that wherever there are Jewish people, they're able to celebrate their religion. You might have a religion too. You might go to church or to a mosque or to a synagogue. And how would you feel if somebody made fun of you for what you believed in or what you did? That's not right. I liked reading to you. I'll see you later.